Good evening, everyone. I hope we have survived the Arctic blast of 2026 so far. I don't think we're done with it yet. So I wanted to start off this evening with something that may not last the entire study time. Caitlin is coming around with lesson handouts. But I thought, like sometimes you hear the phrase, strike while the iron's hot. I think I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to say we're going to skate on the pond while it's frozen. And we're going to talk about, and I don't know if you'd even call it a full-on lesson, more than maybe a word study, maybe not even a word study, maybe a devotional type word study. But the idea of cold and coldness in the scriptures. I thought this might be as good a time as any when we're in a Arctic blast like we haven't seen in a good solid 10 years probably. But the idea of cold and coldness, it appears in the scripture a fair amount of times. It's not on par with salvation and things of that nature, but it's in the scriptures. And it appears, like I said, both literally and also symbolically. It reveals something about us and about what God intends through his use of the word or the conditions, the idea. And I'm not going to dive deep into the Greek and try and say that it means this or that. I'm just drawing from Scripture as we see it on the page in our modern day translation English Bibles. Because we, as God's creation, are those in which God cares about and God responds to us. We respond to him in this relationship that we're supposed to have with him as his crown of creation, as man. But we can also learn some things through this use of coldness and how we might learn to guard against adversities that come along in life. The cold seasons. What does the Bible teach about this notion of cold? Comfort. And as we relate it to ourselves, we say the heart sometimes. Sometimes we say cold-hearted, warm-hearted, things like that. And we can relate this idea from Scripture in many of the ways that we think about it today. But I just wanted to look at it from what Scripture has to say. So, I want to ask, what's the coldest you've ever been? Right now. Well, I remember, and he's not with us anymore. He's with the Lord now. But I remember Norm Stewart when he was here. He always wore a jacket. And he told me ever since he was stationed in Hawaii, he always wore a jacket because he'd never get warm since then. And I know you've always got a jacket close by. So I can remember back probably, I might have been double digits, but I don't think I was. I think I was still single digit age when the last time we had wind chills that were in like the minus 20 degrees around here. I think it was late 80s, maybe early 90s. That's the coldest I ever remember it being. I don't think we're that kind of church. But I mean, I've been seeing on the news that if you go far enough north, there's trees that are like exploding, that sound like shotgun bangs, or sounds like guns going off. I never heard of such a thing till this year. We've had some who have tragically lost lives through this sort of weather, trusting the ice, trusting the conditions maybe when they weren't as favorable as was thought. But the cold exposes us to our limits. I mean, have we not found the limits of ourselves? I mean, even if it's the limits of how much you can stand the person that you're sheltered with. So it brings us to our limits sometimes. When we're cold, we seek shelter, we seek warmth, we seek sometimes the companionship of another friend, spouse, brotherly, sisterly, whatever it may be. But the Bible uses the notion of cold or the solution to cold in the same way, because it reveals something about who we are as human nature, in our human nature, and the need for God's provision. I mean, if we didn't have the know-how, not just the sense to come in out of the cold, but the know-how to build shelter, to make fire, to create warmth, how long would we last? I mean, this Arctic blast is going down to Florida, and the people down there are flipping out because it's in the low 40s. That'd be a heat wave for some of us. But this idea of cold as part of God's created order. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. This is after Noah has come out on the backside of the worldwide flood. He has made altar. He has sacrificed to God. God has received his offering and has told him, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Like I said, these are the response. God favorably receives Noah's burnt offerings after the floodwaters have receded. So what do we take from this? God's saying that this is the way that creation is going to operate. This is not necessarily a punishment. Go ahead. Always.
You ever think a long period of time, things talk about, we're going through it, and have normal, look cold, real warm. Maybe God don't like being wrong. And I'll show you who's fault.
Well, I mean, we do know that God has used things from within creation in order to bring judgment. But we also know that like through the earth goes through like normal cycles where sometimes it's a little bit warmer, sometimes it's a little bit colder. That doesn't mean that we're signing on for everything that comes along with the global warming. But the science has shown us that over spans of time we have had periods where the earth goes through cycles. That's not the same thing as global warming. But this idea that cold is not necessarily a punishment, and like you've said, it's even a promise. We can count on these things. But we can count on these things. We can prepare for these things. It's a part of the mechanics of how nature operates. It's how nature is going to work. It's how the design is working. These seasons remind us as humanity that we're dependent. I mean, we think about how independent we like to think that we are, but how much can we grow outside right now when it's cold? Not a lot. How much can we feed the herds and the flocks right now? What we've stored up in hay over the summer, but if we just turn them loose right now, they're not going to get far. But we're taught in this that we're dependent, that we're not self-sufficient, not totally self-sufficient. We have to depend on God. Cold slows things down, forces preparation, and exposes weakness. Now, how might it expose weakness? How might the cold, it slows things down, forces preparation, but it says also it exposes weakness, our lesson writer says. So how might the cold expose weakness? Okay. Okay. Some people can't handle it. Some people are not prepared. So, I mean, it forces us to either have a mindset of preparation, of forward-looking and forward-thinking, or else we might get caught in a bad situation. Supporting scriptures, Job chapter 37, verses 6 through 10, they describe the power of God in literary terms when these verses describe snow, frost, ice, and all of these things that come at God's command. I'm going to turn to Job and read that. If I can find that real quick. Apologize. You got that?
For the snow, he says, fall on the earth, which we can downpour and strong. He seals the hand of every person so that all people may know his work. When the animal goes into its lair, it remains in its room. From the south comes the storm, from the north the wind is cold. The breath of God, ice is made, and the expanse of water destroys. There's some people say that Paul is talking about the ice.
That could be, because we do see evidence of what we call dinosaurs amongst Job's time, in Job's lifetime. It's debated back and forth, but this idea, Job talks in literary form about the snow that falls on the earth. And the frost at God's command. Psalm 147, verses 16 and 17 say, He showers snow like wool. He scatters the frost like ashes. He hurls his ice as fragments. Who can stand before his cold? Now, God sends snow and frost, just like He sends rain for the harvest, just like He sends sunshine. But it asks us the question, who can endure His cold? Adversity is something we all experience at some point. And I'm not going to say that God sends us adversity, but we do go through adverse times just because of that we live in this fallen world. We're a part of this fallen creation. And we know that sometimes we say left out in the cold. Going through cold times, hard times. Scripture, however, points to God. And that's what all of Scripture does. All of Scripture points to God as being in control of everything, and that we're to trust Him when circumstances might seem distant or might seem cold. we're reminded that in these times that God controls what we cannot. And I think that's an important aspect of looking at this notion of cold in Scripture, is that sometimes it reminds us that we're not in control. The cold times, the hard times, the distant times, however we want to associate the notion of coldness, it should ultimately bring us back to this notion that we're not in control, but we're looking to the one who is. So what does cold force people to do that warmth does not? Bundle up, make a fire, stay home. By the way, I'm glad to see everybody came out tonight. Glad everybody made it safely. I'm hoping everybody made it safely. But just to make sure, we're taking another couple days off school just for precautions. Okay, was that a natural what? Natural preservation, natural reaction, natural bodily response. We're forced into this preparation mode, this planning, gathering, this relying on God mode. Okay. I mean, even in the garden, before sin happened, Adam was supposed to work. What was he supposed to work and to cultivate so everything on the vine would just be there when he was ready to pick it off and eat it? Or was he supposed to do some sort of preparation, preservation type thing? I don't know. That's an interesting thought, but you're right. We're to be industrious, to know that, in the winter season, in the northern hemisphere of the earth, it's going to be cold. But like I said, it exposes us to limitations, to bringing our limitations to us. John chapter 18, verse 18. Now the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was cold. And they were warming themselves, and Peter was also with them, standing, warming himself. The people were warming themselves by a fire. And this was during Jesus' trial with the priests. And I wonder, with such happenings surrounding this account, why did they stop to tell us that people were gathered around a fire? I mean, Jesus is in there with the priests. This is the Son of Man, Son of God. This is like a monumental happening. Why such a small detail that seems insignificant? They're gathered around a fire outside. He didn't want to be too close to Jesus. He didn't want to be associated. So just close enough to not be close enough. In Acts chapter 8, verse 2, we see that the islanders, after Paul's shipwreck, build a fire because of cold and rain. In 2 Timothy, the last writing that we have of Paul before he dies. Paul asks for his cloak to be brought to him. Like I said, these are all seemingly insignificant thoughts by themselves. But we're seeing that these individuals are exposed to weakness, to limitation. Faithful servants of God still need warmth, clothing, this association and care, because it's part of who we are. We're part of human frailty. The Bible never spiritualizes away our physical needs or human need. It acknowledges it. If it's cold outside and you go outside, you're going to be cold. Jesus stood near the fire on the coldest night of betrayal and denial. Cold often appears during moments of testing in Scripture. What phrase do we use to associate bad or negative feelings? What phrase do we often use to associate bad or negative things? Cold-hearted, or left out in the cold possibly. Think about the opposite. What do we refer to positively? Warm-hearted. Warm-hearted, absolutely. We use cold and warm not just for physical temperature, but for disposition. Why do you think the Bible teaches or includes such small details about cold? I mean, like I said, these are almost inconsequential. However, and this is what kept bringing me back to go with this lesson tonight, because I had 2 or 3 I was kind of going between, but we know that everything is recorded in Scripture for a reason, so we can learn something from it. So I'm here hoping to learn from you as much as you'll learn from me. Why do you think that small details like this appear in Scripture? It's part of our lives, practical, maybe everyday experience. I mean, you think about who the gospel was written for, who the New Testament was written for. It's written for everybody, of course. All who will come to Christ for forgiveness, and but we're people. We're humans. We're humanity. We all go through these things. We all experience. It's a common experience, and I think it constantly folds back into this idea that Jesus and the 12 were not so lofty and high and mighty that they could not be touched. They were ordinary people. Jesus is not ordinary. He was Son of God and Son of Man, but the apostles, people just like us to a certain extent. Is it coincidence that these things? I don't think so. Is it just happenstance? Oh, it's cold. By the way, while we were at the trial, we were standing outside and it was cold. Somebody built a fire. We walked over by it and it was warm. I think it shows the reality of these are real people. People that got cold. People that got warm. People that got hungry. People that were fed. People that were ministered to. People who were outcasts that Jesus went and sought out. Matthew chapter 24. Moreover, pray that when you flee, it will not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. Now, Matthew 24, Jesus is talking in prophetic terms. So it must be careful about how we dive into Matthew chapter 24. But in this verse, he talks about fleeing, and he uses the terms winter or Sabbath like he's referring to timing. Like, moreover, pray that when you flee, it not be in winter. Hardships. maybe the speed with which you can go. I hope there's nobody out here running 60, 70 miles an hour down the highway, especially in this condition. I mean, speed limit aside, it's 45, but I mean, even still, he's talking with the idea of, when it's time to get out with haste. Hopefully, it's in conditions are in your favor for doing that. I want to set this verse in its context to make sure that we're not reading it out of context. So we look at Matthew 24, starting with verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Whoever is on the housetop must not go to get his things that are in his house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babes in those days. But pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath. I think he's saying here that in reference to cold or winter, may conditions be favorable for you. This idea that cold is not favorable. Is cold favorable for you, sir? I see another head shaking. I know Danny's already spoke up. The cold is not favorable to most people. And I think he's just saying that with this notion of life's hardships, life's journey, when we have to do things, maybe not wait till the last minute where it's not favorable to hurry. It's not favorable to have to run around. Pray that when you flee, when Jesus is talking about the conditions here that he's prophesying about, may the time you have to flee be favorable conditions. You see, in here, winter may be more than just dangerous traveler conditions. It may be, like I said, a signal for timing. Cold also magnifies a crisis. Escape becomes harder. Fear becomes greater. But it also brings things into sharper focus. Think about trying to get in out of the cold when you have just brought home a Walmart haul of like 500 bags because they put one thing in every bag. And you have 500 bags to carry, and what do you do when it's like 5 below outside? You grab what you have to and come in. Maybe you make another trip out later. Maybe you send a kid or the kids out to get the rest. They're young, they'll bounce back. But this idea that it brings into sharper focus. On the way here, first time I'd been out since Saturday. Had to scrape off all the 15 inches or whatever it was off the car. It took a while. I didn't have gloves. It brought into sharper focus on my hands when I was scraping, and that snow was falling on there. Brought into sharper focus the fact that it's cold outside. But in these verses, Jesus acknowledges the severity of it being time to get out. And it's time to get out now. No hanging around. No, let's grab whatever we have to get it. No, the time is now to get out, is what Jesus is saying in this Matthew chapter 24. So, timing. It's not just the cause for Jesus' words in Matthew 24, but it does give the gravity of the situation. It adds to what the weight. It gives his words greater weight. Don't wait till wintertime. Don't wait, hopefully you've not waited to flee until it's winter. Hopefully you've not waited to flee until it's the Sabbath. Sometimes I tell my children, I hope you haven't waited until 10:59 on Saturday night to find church closed tomorrow. Sometimes they have. But it's this adding weight to this impending, for Jesus' words, this judgment that's coming. It makes the crisis heavier. It gives greater urgency to the words he's delivering to those who are listening. Do we still talk like this today? Do we still say references that tie to descriptions like this? We've talked about left out in the cold. We've talked about warm-hearted, cold-hearted. Do we still use these today? What are some of the things that we use? Warm-hearted, cold-hearted? Okay. Okay. Cold hands, warm heart. So how do they add or take away to the way we communicate? It enhances it because we're humanity. I know we've got a lot of readers in here. I know that you've read some of these things, or you've studied some of these things, or come across these things. It just adds to the way that we communicate. It's not like a military report. I hope you've not waited till the cold of winter to do whatever it is that you're doing. Hope you haven't waited until April 14th to do your taxes. Another type of descriptive way of talking about things. The heat of the sun, the beating down of the sun. Also in Matthew 24, we see just a few verses back. And many false prophets will rise up and mislead many people. And because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will become cold. The one who endures to the end is the one who will be saved. So once again, we see this idea of growing cold. If we're growing, isn't the growing season warm? How is someone growing cold? We just said a minute ago that outside in the conditions right now, which are cold, we couldn't grow anything. So how does something grow cold? Okay. We see the Apostle John in Revelation talking about this in Revelation chapter 3 in one of the letters to the churches. I know your deeds, that neither you are cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. It looks like there's a growing transition here, growing toward coldness that's being commented on here. That there's this contrast in this church, two extremes. One is clearly meant for good, one is clearly meant for bad, and there's a trending toward the bad that is being called out here. This idea of lukewarmness, this growing toward coldness, this growing toward complacency, this lukewarmness, the transition, the fire's gone, like Danny said. The fire's gone. Nobody's tending the fire. Nobody's stoking the fire. Nobody's keeping the fire stirred up and going. We are trending toward coldness, toward indifference. Sometimes we say cold and dead. Sometimes we say dead as a doornail. We have this association. This transition that is commented on may be the worst alternative between cold and hot, according to Scripture. Because there's time to turn it around, and that's what he's trying to get him to do. But we have this idea of cold being indifferent. You know what? Maybe we have church today. Maybe we don't. Maybe the preacher adequately prepares. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe the Sunday school teacher prepares. Maybe he doesn't. But at least we got somebody in there to wrangle the children or whoever. Distance, loss of passion, loss of drive, loss of dedication, loss of commitment. Cold. One step away from dead. You see, this coldness, it's not always necessarily rebellious. Otherwise, why would this church even exist in Revelation if it were rebellious? People just wouldn't go. It's just neglect. Neglect in dedication to do the things that they were called to do. This lukewarmness is dangerous because it feels comfortable. It's familiar. We're not going to try anything new. We're not going to rock the boat. We're cold. We're calculated. We're lukewarm. No action taken. Okay? Cold hearts usually don't freeze overnight. They just chill gradually. So that's a question. Do hearts really become cold quickly, or does it take time? Takes time. And what are the causes? Staying away, neglect. On whose part? Laziness. Individual. Yeah, Acts 2:42 fellowship. Very much. Very much. Like you were saying, the fellowship, Acts 2:42, it's what keeps us warm. It's what keeps us together. It's what keeps us from growing cold. It's like you said, it's over time. It's that constant staying away, that constant not being apart that causes us to grow cold. Time. Maybe somebody's been disappointed. Maybe somebody's been distracted. But then I think it becomes, like you said, those who are gathered together to reach out to those, to not let those grow cold if we don't have to, if we can help someone avoid it. God's response to the cold. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 21. She is not afraid of the cold or of the snow, for her household are clothed with scarlet. The household is not afraid of snow because it is clothed. Preparations have been made. Warnings have been followed. There is no reason to fear the snow or its coldness, because diligence is the characteristic exemplified in this Proverbs passage. Acts 28, verse 2, we're back to Paul on the island of Malta, I believe. The natives show extraordinary kindness, for they kindled a fire and took us all in because of the rain that had started and because of the cold. You see, fire is provided in the cold by the natives. But is it really just the natives? The reason I ask this is because circumstantially, yes, it was the natives. But also God in Acts chapter 27, the chapter prior, in verses 23 and 4, Paul is visited by an angel of the Lord, telling him that he must stand before Caesar. So Paul is not going to die on the way to Rome because he's told he must stand before Caesar. So God is providential in this account, guiding Paul's travels with safety toward getting to Rome. You see, God doesn't deny the cold. It's still cold outside. God doesn't just completely revamp the weather for that day. He doesn't revamp the weather conditions for the sea. He doesn't revamp the temperature. God does not deny or withhold any of that. He does not suspend any of that with a biblical miracle. Rather, he provides Paul what he needs to get through it. He provides Paul with warmth through the kindness of these natives in bringing fire, and provides Paul a way through it. God prepares his people before the cold comes. And we have a great place to prepare here for when cold times come. They don't always come all at once. They don't come to everybody the same way. But we do know that there are cold times in our lives, distant times, times of trial, times of adversity, like I said. But God provides and prepares a way for his people before the cold comes. God often uses community as a source of warmth. And when I say community, I mean the community of believers. Like I said, we have a, and it's been commented on by others besides me, we have a great congregation here. Fellowship has been talked about tonight. Checking in on each other. Hopefully in this weather here, hopefully we've checked in on each other, at least to some degree. Has anyone here not been contacted or reached out to someone else? Making sure no one's going without, making sure everyone is, there's accounting for everyone, that everyone's safe. No one's left without food, without heat, without a way out if they need a way out. We've been seeing on Facebook, Eric's been plowing everybody out. God meets us in the cold with covering and cleansing and provision, if we will meet him at that provision. See, one of the things I want to reflect on is we're in a cold time physically. But what about personally? I'm not asking anybody to raise hands, I'm not asking anybody to share anything, but we know that we all go through cold and distant times. If this is one of those times, what fire or warmth has God provided that maybe we're not looking at, that we're not reaching out for, that we're not accessing? Who around you might be spiritually or emotionally in need? And what can we do about that? We can invite them to stay spiritually close to the fire, into the fellowship. We have a great church leadership. We have great doulos. We have great Salt 19. We have all of these. We have all of these ways in which we can stay connected, in which we can have to not go through the cold alone. We can prepare, or we can be prepared to help another through a cold season. We can be that source of warmth to another, because the cold is real. The cold is hard. And the cold will reveal our needs. But as God's people, God never leaves his people without warmth, without covering, without a way to survive the cold. And that's what I have for this study on coldness throughout the Scriptures. Do we have any prayer requests? Allison Johnson. Okay. Sir. Okay. Yep. Okay. I want to do things a little bit different tonight. I'll start with closing us with prayer, and I'd like all of our leaders to pray for what you have brought up or what your family's brought up, and Gary, have you close us. So Doug, Danny, Larry, then finish with Gary. So I'll go ahead and go ahead and start. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here to gather together to go through this study that's probably not a typical study that we would normally do, but we've taken time because it just matches the weather outside. And we just ask that we would be able to maybe just have some additional insights into what you've given us in Scripture, because we know all Scripture is profitable for preaching and teaching and for greater understanding. We ask that you be with those that we mentioned. Lord, I want to bring the Louisville Bible College and some of the students who are just going through some of the things with ministry changes and challenges, and you know what those situations are, and I just want to bring those to you, as well as of a couple of my students that are having some medical happenings, and I just want to bring those to you and ask these things in your Son's holy name.